Good afternoon. Welcome to this hearing of the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is 2 p.m. Here in Capitol Conference Room 325. I am Vice Chair Greg Takayama. I'm accompanied by Chair David Tarnas, as well as on my right, Representative Kanani Souza. In case you're wondering, the House has this wonderful tradition of allowing vice chairs to chair resolution hearings to give us the experience of and the thrill of actually chairing something. So I very much appreciate Chair Tarnas for allowing me this opportunity. Just some ground rules for those on Zoom as well as in the hearing room. We'll try and allow as many people to testify as possible, so we'll have a 2-minute time limit, if possible, per testifier. Just be aware that we have all received your written testimony and have reviewed it carefully. For those on Zoom, as well as perhaps those of you in the room, while waiting to testify, please mute yourself and turn off your video after you're done testifying. The Zoom function allows you to chat with our technical staff, and only them. So we don't have chat capabilities as members. If you're disconnected, you can attempt to rejoin the meeting, and we will make accommodations if time permits to hear you. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images on Zoom. And of course, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior, which goes without saying. Now, for purposes of this hearing, we'll combine HCR, House Concurrent Resolutions, and House Resolutions because they are worded identically. With that, we'll move on to first resolution, which is HCR 8, urging county governments to review their respective government structures to identify organizational risks of corruption and ethical violations, and to develop systematic improvements to such risks. First up, we have the Honorable Dan Foley from the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Judge Foley, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. Also, thank you so much for beginning this hearing with resolutions proposed by the Commission to improve standards of conduct. I support House Concurrent Resolution number 8, which is essentially asking the counties to do what the state government has been doing for the last year, beginning with House Resolution number 9, creating the commission, putting on the Commission on Ethics, Campaign Spending, League of Women Voters, Common Cause, and others. We've done a thorough review of state law and structure, trying to identify causes of corruption and ethical lapses, strengthen our laws, restore public trust. The legislature and your committee in particular has been spending a great deal of time this session doing just that, and we ask the counties to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge. Next up, we have the Hawaii State Ethics Commission. Robert Harris.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee. Much like the Honorable Dan Foley, we would like to support this measure and recognize that it came out of the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. I do want to highlight Professor Randy Roth, who testified with the Commission on Standards of Conduct, specifically proposed this concept, maybe likening it to how physicians, when they have a critical mistake, either mortality or morbidity, they'll have what they call an M&M conference, specifically to try to identify what went wrong and how they can make sure it doesn't happen again. So we saw this as something similar. We try not to be very specific with the language, recognizing the counties are probably going to be in the best position to know how to move forward with such an investigation, but the idea or the intent is, much like Judge Foley said, it really is an opportunity to try to make sure that these dire corruption issues that are happening at the county level do not happen again. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Let's see, we have written testimony from Dara Carlin in support. Is there anyone else in the room or on Zoom wishing to testify on HCR 8? Seeing none. Member, any questions for the testifiers? If not, we'll move on. Next up, we have HCR 11, HR 8, urging the counties to devote sufficient funding to their respective county ethics boards or commissions. First up, we have Judge Foley. Judge, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I didn't see my written testimony posted on your website, but it was confirmed and copied to me, having been sent in. But essentially, what it is asking the counties to do is to provide adequate funding to their ethics boards and commissions. This is particularly important for the neighbor islands, which are understaffed and under-resourced. Your legislature has provided a lot of funding for our State Ethics Commission and made it a very effective agency in ensuring our ethics and lobbying laws are complied with. And we would like to see county ethic boards and commissions get the same support from their county governments as the legislature has given to our State Ethics Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And just so you know that your testimony is indeed posted on the website in actually shorter form than what you just said. But anyway, thank you. Next up, we have the Hawaii State Ethics Commission.
Good afternoon. Aloha. The Ethics Commission is in support of this resolution. As we noted in our testimony, budget priorities do reflect what the city or state is prioritizing. Specifically here, we see a gap in the city's capacity to provide advice to employees, to provide educational opportunities, to advise city and county or city employees how to act, as well as lacking the capacity to try to do adequate enforcement. I do really want to highlight, we recognize that the commission members at the county level are all volunteers, and we think that they do an extraordinary amount of work. Really, this focus is not criticizing them, but really focusing on making sure they have the type of support and staff and resources necessary to adequately fulfill our constitutional mandate. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next up, we have Holomua Collaborative. Joshua Wish.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Josh Wish for Holomua Collaborative. We stand in support of our testimony on this resolution, echoing what everyone else said and also noting one of the commission members, I think it actually said of their own county that they were operating on a shoestring. So just kind of underscoring the need to provide them additional resources. So we'll stand on that. And also just want to express Holomua's gratitude for your leadership in pushing forward so many of the bills that came out of the Foley Commission and similar bills from ethics and campaign spending. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Now, that's all the testifiers we have listed for HCR 11. Anyone else in the room or on Zoom wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, let's move on. Next up, we have HCR 23, HR 25, requesting the judiciary to convene a task force to examine and make recommendations regarding existing procedures of the Hawaii Paroling Authority setting the minimum terms of imprisonment. And first up, we have testimony from the judiciary. I don't believe they're present, but in summary, the judiciary requests the resolution be amended to designate another member of the task force as chairperson because they feel that if there are task force recommendations for legislation affecting the judiciary, it may be inconsistent with the role of the judicial branch. Next up, we have the Hawaii Paroling Authority. Mr. Hume.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Fred Hyun with the Hawaii Paroling Authority, and we stand in strong support of the resolution and would offer additional oral comments. We would hope that the task force would closely examine and review the current sentencing guidelines for both the courts as well as the paroling authority. And this would help ID pros and cons of and dispel myths that so many different entities have about setting of the minimums and put it into proper perspective, as well as it can take a hard look at the indeterminate sentencing laws of the state and the impact of mandatory sentences upon its impact on prison populations. And we would also recommend that a facilitator be able to manage the task force, as everybody does have busy schedules, but it is a tremendous task with all these different parties. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hune. Next up, we have Office of the Public Defender, James Tabe. And as he walks up, let me disclose at the outset to everyone that my daughter does work for Mr. Tabe as Associate Public Defender. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Takayama, Chair Tarnas, and Representative Ganadin, and I guess the others who may be watching. James Tabe, State Public Defender. Normally, I guess I would like to stand in support of the testimony and sit down, but I'll say a few words just because.
Well trained by Chair Tarnas.
Even though he's not leading this, we support it. We think if 33 states, it's been identified, 33 states have an indeterminate system of sentencing. Either 32 states have it right or have it wrong, which could be possibly because Hawaii is very special, but it begs that we need to study this because being the only one, there are some issues. In our testimony, we identified certain issues that I think that are relevant and may tend to support a bill changing the system, but otherwise, we do support it. And just to let you know, even though we do support it, there's nothing against the HPA. We think Mr. Hune and his agency does a wonderful job here at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Might also note that your testimony makes a note of saying that such a change may expedite the process of defendants being sentenced and having access to programming. So thank you. Crime Victim Compensation Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair,
Afternoon.
Member. Pam Ferguson-Bray, Executive Director of the Crime Victim Compensation Commission. The Commission supports the inclusion of a representative from a victim advocacy group as a member of the working group, and also supports the HPA and Judiciary's proposal that an independent group run this so that we don't have a foregone conclusion about what the recommendations would be. The Commission has represented victims' interests both in the Justice Reinvestment Initiative proposals in 2011, 2012, and also in the Penal Code Review Committee of 2015. And I have to tell you that having a voice and having a vote on a panel for victims to make sure the needs and the interests of victims and community safety are in the forefront of decisions makes a real difference to the outcome. For the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, we have a model restitution project as a result of those efforts. We have a SAVIN victim notification system. We had safety planning built into the legislation relating to the Justice Reinvestment. In the 2015 Penal Code Review Committee, the marital rape provisions were changed to provide greater protection to women against marital rape. The victim's right to be heard provisions were amended, and also some issues relating to restitution were fixed. So I think that in any amendments to our criminal justice system, to leave out victims, to leave out a voice and a vote, and just tokenize that issue is a mistake for the product. Really makes it so the legislators and other policy members don't have the same level of confidence that they might have otherwise in the product. So thank you very much. We think it's very, very important to include that voice and that vote on any panel looking at criminal justice reform. Thank you.
So noted. Thank you very much. Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission, Martha Torney.
Good afternoon. The Commission supports this measure, and we respectfully request one amendment be made that the chair of the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission or designee should replace the reference to the Commission's oversight coordinator as a member of the task force. This would align with the structure of the other members of the task force. Our commission is made up of experienced criminal justice experts with deep knowledge of sentencing structure and the Hawaii paroling and the role of the Hawaii Paroling Authority. I also want to say we would definitely support including an advocate for victims being a member of this group. Thank you.
very much. Let's see, we have written comments from the Legislative Reference Bureau. So next testifier is Community Alliance on Prisons, Kat Brady.
Aloha, Chair. Both chairs, I guess, today, and Representative Ganadin. Kat Brady testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons. You know, we always kind of wondered why the paroling authority sets the minimum when the court sentences. So I'm still confused about that. I don't understand, because the court has interviewed the defendant, they know the case. It just seemed crazy to me. Anyway, there was a research project done by Prison Policy Institute, and they looked at parole in all 50 states. Wyoming came out first with a B. Second is Hawaii, that came out with a C+. Almost everybody else got a D. Most states got an F. So I just want to reiterate that too. Adding the commission, the oversight coordinator, is really an important thing, because part of their statute says that they ensure the comprehensive offender reentry system under 353H is working properly. So that is their mission, to make sure that the reentry law is working. And in the reentry law, it talks about releasing people at their minimum. So we support that. We support having a victim's advocate on it, and we really like this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully this resolution will resolve all of our questions. Dennis Dunn. With perfect timing. Thank you.
They call me the late Dennis Dunn for a reason. It's not because I'm dead. Thank you, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Takayama. I'm Dennis Dunn. I'm testifying as an individual citizen. As you probably know, I retired recently as the director for the Victim Witness COCOA Services in the prosecutor's office after 44 years. I am testifying today in regard to SCR. I'm sorry, wrong committee, HCR 23. And in regard to this, I'll just make a couple points. You have my written testimony. First of all, I just thought it was a little unusual to ask the judiciary to convene a task force to examine the procedures of the basically another branch of government, which is basically the paroling authority as a part of the executive branch. And I believe that the paroling authority itself has raised that question in terms of maybe some kind of a more neutral arbiter as far as chairing this might be appropriate. I think that's particularly true because in the past, in fact, I've taken part in one of these task forces, the one that reviewed the penal code a number of years ago. Usually it's chaired by a judge, and so it just seems a little bit unusual. So yeah, I would ask you to give consideration to that. The optics of, the judiciary judging the paroling authority is just a little bit, I think, has some concern. The other, of course, and was mentioned by other people, is that there are currently no proposals for any victims or victims advocates groups to be on this task force, and I think that's a real oversight. It's a little bit frustrating because it seems like every year there's a resolution like this, not like this particular topic, but to have a task force and the victims' representatives have been left off. As I noted in my testimony, when we had the Penal Code Review Committee that I served on, it was actually at that time Circuit Judge Steve who got victims advocates appointed, and I thought we had a good balance and a good mix of discussion. I think the product that we came up with was very good. So you have my concerns. I would ask you to consider amending these measures to address them, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. You might be happy to know the judiciary shares your concerns
Great.
about the chairmanship of
Thank
the task force. Let's see, we have testimony in written form from MAD, which supports the suggestion that we include a representative from a victim advocacy group as a member of the working group. That's all we have for testifiers. Anyone else on Zoom or here in the room wishing to testify? Seeing none. Chair, members, any questions? Representative Gannon.
Hey, afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm looking at page 3 of your testimony. You discuss a delay in rehabilitation based on the current system. Can you explain to the committee how that works?
Well, okay, as I think my written testimony sort of outlines it, what happens is that, I guess, when a newly sentenced defendant or a felon enters Halava or WCCC, they get assessed by this unit called RAD, and rehabilitation,
Reception, Assessment, and Diagnostic Unit.
that's that unit.
Thank you, Chair.
And then one of they classify them in what level, minimum security, medium security. They also, classify them, but they also recommend programming that will help them rehabilitate. Well, that happens within 60 days. Unfortunately, no one starts their programming at that point because they want to wait for the parole board to decide what the minimum term is. So that happens, now it's between 4 and 6 months, but let's say it's 6 months. So at the 6-month time, when they get their minimum, it's important because I believe the facilities, and I don't want to speak for public safety, is they don't want to put someone that has a 5-year minimum into a program right away. Let's give it to someone who has a low minimum so we could get that person started. So everyone needs to wait to see what that person's minimum term is. Therefore, because it makes sense, right? You don't want someone finishing their program, they still got 3.5 years left, while someone that could get out very soon should get their programming first. So that's the delay that occurs, unfortunately, when we have to wait for a minimum term hearing. So basically, it's dead time. I mean, they may be working and whatnot and staying out of trouble, but essentially, no one's being placed in any classes at that point.
So these programs are generally good at decreasing recidivism.
Right. I mean, some of these programs that they have that are, at Waiawa Correctional Facility, at Kulani, at WCCC, they're run by very dedicated individuals, and many of our clients, when we see them at the parole hearing, they say wonderful, you see a change, Obviously, some of it could be fake just to impress Mr. Hume, but otherwise, but then you really do see, people, we see their workbooks actually sometimes, and, it's filled out and there's a lot of thought into it. So it does, these programs do work. But again, they can't start it right away.
So
the ones that can start right away.
Is there a chance that people could get maxed out? I mean, maxed out meaning get close to their maximum sentence without getting programming because of the lack of programming, and then also this current system where you have to wait until the parole, like HPA has to come up with a report?
In a way, it can, I guess. I believe the parole board tries not to. They try to have parole people and give them some time because they just don't want to just send them out without any programming. So they try to do that, but if it's like we have to wait the 6 months, I don't think you get in line until after you see the parole board. So you're wasting some time if you have a 4-year sentence or 5-year sentence. So if you have to do a substance abuse program, or you have to do another anger management program, and then you have to go through work furlough, each time you finish something, then you got to wait to get transferred to another facility. And so it does, because you don't, as soon as you finish a program, you don't start the next day on the next program, or you don't do it simultaneously, because they're held in different facilities. So yes, it could run into the max time period. I mean, theoretically it can, but I believe the parole board and the caseworkers at the public safety try their best so it doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative?
Thank you. Mr. Tabe, before you sit down, I could ask this question of any of the testifiers, but since you're there, I'll ask you. In your testimony, you say Hawaii is one of 33 states that have an indeterminate sentencing system. However, Hawaii is the only one of those 33 states that uses a parole board to set the minimum term of imprisonment that a defendant must serve before becoming eligible for parole. So that's what you were saying earlier about being, perhaps you didn't use the word outlier, but we are unique in the regard that of all the states, 33 of them that use an indeterminate sentencing system, we're the only ones that use a parole board to set the minimum term of imprisonment.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to back up because there are people watching this saying, what is an indeterminate sentencing system?
Okay.
So could you please explain that?
Okay, in Hawaii, we have 3 classes of felonies, A, B, and C, C being the lowest, A being the highest. Each level has a maximum term. So basically, when a judge sentences a person to a 5-year term, they're not sentencing them for a full 5 years. They're sentencing them to what we call an indeterminate term of 5 years, meaning it's up to 5 years. So we don't know, indeterminate, I guess, means not determined. So the specific number of years or months or days is not determined. They just set a maximum. And that's what, and oftentimes we'll see maybe in testimony the word open. We call it an open 5, that's which is used in criminal justice lingo, so to speak. But yeah, that's what indeterminate is. It just means it's the maximum term. Most defendants do not serve the maximum term. During the indeterminate, and for the public that think, oh my goodness, they're not serving their maximum term, they do serve a minimum term. And if they get released, they will be on parole through their maximum term. So basically, they are still in the care of, or maybe not in the custody of the paroling authority at that point. Or so
Okay.
that's basically what's going on.
That's a great explanation. So if we're the only one of the 33 states that have an indeterminate sentencing system, that use a parole board to set the minimum term, the other 32 states, how do they do it?
The judge will set a term.
The minimum
I think
term?
most of them sets a minimum term, yes.
Okay. And is that done at the time of sentencing?
At time of sentencing, yes. So it's all
So
in
there
one
would be no
package, so-
delay in waiting for RAD unit, the Reception, Assessment, and Diagnostic Unit at the correctional facility to make the assessment, because that would happen right when they arrive
Yeah,
at
so-
the correctional facility, and then they can begin programming in order of priority that the
Right.
correctional facility sets.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if everyone knows what the minimum term is
Yes.
already and what RAD has recommended.
Yes.
Then they'll start prioritizing and whatnot.
Okay.
We could cut down a few months, and obviously the overcrowding every day or
Yes.
is precious here, just to keep this numbers, at a good level here. So-
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. That helps me understand and everyone else who's watching understand. Yeah, thank you very much. That's all my questions, Chair.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I do have a question for Martha Torning. If you would refresh my memory in terms of the 5 members of the Oversight Commission, do they not include an appointee from the courts, the judiciary?
Yes, the Chief
governor,
Justice.
the Senate, the House, and
OHA.
Office of Hawaiian Affairs?
Yes.
So that provides this commission, your commission, with an independence that may not apply to other members of the task
Yes.
force, perhaps? And would you agree with Ms. Brady's assertion that your oversight of public safety department includes the monitoring and review of the paroling authority?
Parole is mentioned in the law, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So would you also agree that perhaps the Oversight Commission would be ideally suited to serve as the chairperson of this proposed task force?
We probably have the least vested interest.
Okay, thank you for your agreement. Thank you. No more questions. Let's move on to,
Fred is trying to get your attention.
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hume, would you like to,
Yeah, he wants to-
please embellish ahead? Yes.
So I would just like to clarify some of the statements from my good friend and buddy, Mr. Tabe. So it's not as cut as dry with setting of minimums, because when a court may set a minimum, they will use different instruments. Say, for example, for sex offenders, the courts may use the LSI and the ACES versus.
I'm sorry, you may need to classify, let
Well,
us know what those
Those
acronyms
tools
stand for.
do risk assessment,
Okay,
okay? Versus with sex offenders, you would use a static 99 and a stable 2000. Okay, so these instruments play a key role in assessing risk to the public and community. Now, what people forget is many individuals who are sentenced felons who have served probation receive credit for time served. So if they did 2 years on probation on an open 5, they got 3 years left on their sentence. All individuals, even after they've served or been revoked from the probation, when they are admitted into the facility, the board by law is required to hold a minimum hearing within 6 months of their admission. Now, that also means we can schedule it, but if the defense attorney, and not necessarily the public defenders, are not prepared to proceed, and/or the inmate is not prepared to proceed, that may be extended another 2 months or 3 months, and that all depends if they have pending felony matters that need to go to trial, or a pretrial conference, or they're going to be sentenced on other matters, or if they're brought back on a parole violation. So these things are really case by case and are kind of complicated, and it just cannot be swept with one wave of the wand. It's very different and very individual.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your explanation. Let's move on. Next measure we have up is HCR 51, HR 53, urging the governor to initiate a clemency program for individuals who have been prosecuted for cannabis-related offenses. And first up, we have on Zoom, let's see, the Last Prisoner Project.
Adrian Roca?
Good afternoon. Can folks hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for the time. We also submitted written testimony, so I'll be brief in my oral testimony. Just here to show support for HCR 51 and HR 53. Over the last summer, we worked
Sorry, would
with
you like to
the-
introduce yourself by name, please?
Yes, sorry. My name is Adrián Manuel Rocha. I'm the Senior Policy Associate
Thank you.
with the Last Prisoner Project. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that works exclusively at the intersection of cannabis and criminal justice.
Thank you, please
Last
proceed.
year, I'm sorry?
Please
Yes,
proceed.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Last year, we worked with Hawaii's Dual Use of Cannabis Task Force to provide recommendations specifically around automatic record clearance for individuals with cannabis-related offenses and sentence modification for individuals who are still incarcerated for cannabis-related offenses if cannabis should become legal. Those recommendations became codified in SB 669 as well as several other vehicles. We're here to offer our technical assistance as well on HCR 51 to provide a streamlined process for individuals under consideration for clemency for cannabis-related offenses. We can also offer support through our Cannabis Justice Initiative, a partnership with the National Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys to provide pro bono legal support to potential candidates that are eligible for clemency for cannabis-related offenses. We can also work with all the associated stakeholders, be it the Department of Safety, Attorney General, or any other relevant agencies, to provide conversations to ensure that individuals who are serving time for cannabis-related offenses have the opportunity to have a shot at clemency under Governor Green's administration. I'll close by asking folks to check out our website at pardonstoprogress.com to see the other jurisdictions we've worked with, including other states and municipalities on mayoral pardons, for more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we have written testimony in support, all of them in support, from the Aloha Green Holdings, ACLU of Hawaii, Hawaii Cannabis Industry Association, Marijuana Policy Project, as well as Emily Sarasa, Afsun Shirazi, and Randy Gauntz. Have I missed anyone else wishing to testify on Zoom or in person? Seeing none, members, any questions? Representative Ganadin.
The Last Prisoner Project, down with LPP.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up your name, man. How many states have done what we're asking to do here with this resolution?
In terms of setting up dedicated pardon processes for cannabis-related offenses,
Yes.
So far, five have done that. That's Pennsylvania, Oregon, Washington, New York, and New Jersey.
And is it connected to bigger legislation having to do with legalizing recreational marijuana, or are these independent measures?
These are independent measures. There are additional measures that were included in Senate Bill 669 that were specific if cannabis was legalized. This is assuming the current regime of laws that govern cannabis stay in effect.
Is this a national problem? Like, I mean, should we expect national legislation to assist states with these kinds of things? Because it's like, you know, the last two presidential administrations have tried to come out with more sweeping national policy having to do with marijuana.
Yes, it's a great question. So last year, President Biden issued a presidential pardon decree for all individuals with federal simple possession for cannabis offenses. However, we know through our work that most offenses actually happen at the state level. So while there might be some individuals who are Hawaiians that had federal offenses that would have had those pardoned through Biden's initiative, most of the offenses would be at the state level, which is why we're in support of this amendment to set up a clemency process for those individuals so that they have relief under state law.
I'm assuming it is, but have the individuals who are serving time, who have served time, who might benefit from this measure, is there sort of a racial or poverty dynamic to this conversation?
Yes, we know from national research that most individuals, although usage across race and ethnicity is similar, individuals, people of color like myself, Black and brown individuals, are penalized at 5 times the national rate of individuals who are not people of color or marginalized communities.
That's not good. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on. HCR 63, HR 65, requesting the Attorney General to convene a task force to research the laws, ordinances, and rules prohibiting conduct on or near school grounds or for the general protection of children attending school, and to distribute a summary of those laws to state and county buildings for public display. First up, we have the State Attorney General's Office on Zoom.
Right here.
Oh, I'm sorry, not in Zoom, in here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Takayama, Chair Tarnas, and members of the committee. Deputy Attorney General Elise Oyama. As indicated in our testimony, we're opposing just the resolution as it's written. We do recommend that this might be better suited for the LRB, the Legislative Reference Bureau. So that's basically what our comments are directed towards. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be here if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Laurie Hirohata? Hi, please.
Hi, I'm Laurie Hirohata, and I'm actually the one that started this. And then it went to bill drafters. very grateful that, we pushed it so quickly. But I kind of agreed, because I'm a former state planner at different departments and things, and this used to, as I said in my testimony, we used to do this as the planners and program specialists. So I started with Department of Education, because that's their kind of kuleana. But Bill Draft just came up with AG, and it kind of made sense, because that's kind of who oversees the law. My intent actually is to help all the community people, so that we can get our act together, because every school, when you talk to principals, vice principals, you talk to the police, you talk to prosecuting attorney's office, we're getting a different answer. This has always been, a problem, but it's kind of significant, again, because of kind of crime, whether it's, people running over kids or leaving drug paraphernalia right outside the school property, including, like fentanyl, crystal meth. Every time you call the police, and depends on who you get. Sometimes they're willing to assist, but a lot of times they're going, what are you calling me for? What am I going to do about it? So I've gone up the chain of command, as I've been trained to do in my past life. I can't even get a straight answer from the different people, like in HPD. I've talked to a couple of prosecuting attorneys. I've talked to DOE. I've talked to our city council person. The reason I got involved is that in my area, as I said, I live in the Mo'ili area, and we had some serious crime recently. The neighbors are concerned. They call the police, get different answers. We used to be more involved, but with COVID, we all kind of died off. But the sad part is, for example, we used to have, we used to have an exercise class at Kuhio School. So there were many of us around there to help take care of the school, as well as Kaimiki High School. No longer have exercise classes. So we're trying, but we're fragmented ourselves. And in frustration, because so many people are complaining to me, I introduced this bill. And what I'm just hoping for is what we used to do, is to have coordination and integration. I came in because face-to-face is really helpful. Zoom is okay, but you don't get to do some of the personal interaction kind of things. So I'm just asking you to please consider this resolution. Thank you.
And before you go, just if I may,
Yes.
as the proponent of this measure,
Yes.
you'd have no objection to having the Legislative Reference Bureau, rather than the Attorney General, do this compilation of...
Sure, I stood with that. My only issue is that I want to make sure that, and it may have changed because I've been out of the system for a while because I'm actually disabled, but it may have changed, and sometimes LRB works in a vacuum. And I don't have a problem if they're going to run a task force with interagency cooperation, because one of the things that we were trying to go for, and Rep. Nishimoto is very involved because he represents my community, is that a lot of the issues we're dealing with actually deals with homeless population, because they're too close to the schools. And then we find from other places, other schools and other districts, same problem.
Okay.
They're just too close to school, and crimes then happen with that, yeah. So whoever you decide, and whichever agency, is amenable to it, I'm fine with it. I just want to see something done so we can be better eyes and ears to protect the kids.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for coming to the Capitol.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see so
Let
good.
me run through the...
And I'm
rest of
sorry,
the testifiers.
Yeah, okay, ahead.
I'm sorry.
Later
well,
on?
You know what? Go ahead, Representative Gannon.
I just didn't want you to have to sit down and...
Yeah.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead, stand
I
back
need
up.
to exercise.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your advocacy, and, like so many people who come before the legislature, I feel like we should be standing before you.
Okay.
So thank you for doing this stuff. I'm thinking back to when I dropped off my nephews to their public school at the second grade in Northern California last year, and how there were just big signs everywhere giving people notice for what not to do. Big anti-gun signs, no smoking, no rollerblading, skateboarding, all kinds of stuff, like lots of notice everywhere.
Right.
Are you envisioning that kind of a thing?
That would be next step. I'm just trying to get us together so we know what the laws are. In the past, when I was in the field, because I'm both a special educator and a social worker, in the past, I know I'm over time, let me real quickly, maybe 15, 18 years ago, there was a problem out on the Waianae side, and some people were thinking it was fun to give the kids, especially the special ed kids, crack cocaine, crystal meth, because it looks like rock candy. So I got called in because one of the special ed teenagers that I knew very well had ingested it and had a bad seizure. So we went out there And we worked, from police, community agencies, state, to take care of this problem. And, back then, we took care of it. Nowadays, because we have social media and we're not face-to-face, it's really hard to get that coordinated group, to take care of that. Next step would be, because certain states, it's been many, many years, they have like a handbook for the parents and neighbors. Exactly what you're saying, what can do, cannot do, and then anybody who wants to look it up nowadays, it should be on the web. We don't have any of that, is what I'm trying to say. And so we don't have the coordination and we don't have things going on. And some of these neighbors are doing things that are actually kind of dangerous to themselves, going out and confronting homeless. As I said to some of you, it started with a woman who was nude, homeless, and stripping down naked to shower, to bathe herself, and she's right alongside the road, just as the kids are starting to go to school. So these homeless have confronted her, which is not safe, but the police come eventually, and they keep on saying, well, what do you want us to do about it? She's no longer nude. And they're concerned enough about the kids, so that's why I'm saying if we could get to that level, we can post all the signs, that would be wonderful. But even just knowing, the baseline rules, that would be really, really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we have testimony from Peter Daspit, Lourdes Scheibert, Greg Misakian, Jeff Sadino, all in support, as well as testimony from Gerard Silva in opposition. Anyone else wishing to testify on HCR 63? Please come to the podium and identify yourself.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support on behalf of Kapalama Neighborhood Security Watch. So I'm a safety coordinator and a co-captain, and we're just providing comments to say that we are in strong support. And so homelessness is a policy concern, a humanitarian concern, but it is also a medical and public safety concern. The medical and public safety part is what people tend to overlook. And the federal HUD defines chronically homeless as an unsheltered person with a debilitating medical condition or conditions. This is a medical concern. It also involves public safety because HPD is dispatched to respond to homelessness. Although the root of homelessness is medical, when homeless people get rowdy, it becomes a public safety concern because domestic violence, destruction of property, and the homeless people like to burn each other. So we're just providing comments that for a more effective resolution, perhaps you could consider consulting with the not the Honolulu Police Department, it's already consulted, with the city's Department of Community Services, who works closely with PIG, Partners in Care, and also the Emergency Services Department, which operates CORE, Crisis Outreach Response Engagement, and the ambulance, to work on this matter, to give you a list of laws, and HPD can tell you if the laws are even enforceable or if they're not enforceable at all, and how to improve on that. And so currently there isn't really an administrative umbrella to coordinate the efforts for the homelessness, right? So we see sporadic efforts.
Thank you.
And yeah, so
Please
we just wanted
summarize.
to comment. Thank you for the
Okay,
opportunity.
thank you very
to
much.
testify.
Anyone else here wishing to testify on HCR 63? Seeing none, members, any further questions? Seeing none, let's move on. I'm sorry, Laura. Yes, please.
Glad someone else is here to testify. I came in because there are way more people, I think, that are concerned about this, but I can't get anybody to go like on TV. We have serious, like when we had the person die in front of Kaimiki High School, there are a lot of neighbors who are complaining, and they complain to me because they know my background. But then I said, okay, I can get media there. No one will go on TV. So we can't get the public, to get consensus. So that's why I'm doing this too. But just to
Understood.
let you know that there's more people that are concerned, but I don't know why. They want to go on TV or talk to a reporter or anything, or even come here.
Well,
testify.
believe me, as someone who's familiar with the subject, I know how difficult it is to get people
Yes.
to agree to go on
Yes,
TV.
because
But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Let's move on to HCR 74, HR 75, encouraging the facilitation of a path to citizenship for immigrants from parties to the compacts of free association. And we have testimony from the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission in support, as well as Cards Pintor in support. And that's it, all written testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify here? Seeing none, no one to question, so let's move on to HCR 86, HR 93, requesting the Legislative Reference Bureau to conduct a study on systems of firearms insurance and other financial responsibility requirements pertaining to firearms. And first up, we have the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Nick McLean on behalf of the Attorney General. As we indicate in our written testimony, the Department believes that financial responsibility requirements, including potentially insurance requirements relating to firearms, are a promising policy option that may warrant further consideration. I want to emphasize that the Department would look forward and would certainly be happy to work very collaboratively with the LRB on this matter, and we're certainly aware of the comments that they've submitted in terms of written comments, and so we would certainly underscore that point in our testimony now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. We have written testimony from the Legislative Reference Bureau in offering comments, as well as written testimony from Andrew Crosslin in opposition and Gerard Silva in opposition. Anyone else here wishing to testify on HCR 86? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, let's move on to the next measure, which is HCR 87, HR 94, requesting the Office of Elections to prepare and submit a proposal to the legislature on the cost and personnel required to prepare and distribute a voter information guide. First up, we have Scott Nago, Office of Elections.
Good afternoon. The Office of Elections will stand on its written testimony providing comments, and in our testimony, we did provide an initial estimate of $171,000 to produce a voter guide, and will be available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And you also mentioned that in your testimony that you estimate the cost to print and mail such a voter guide at $15 per piece. Is that correct?
The $15 per piece would be if it were in-house, available upon request. So we wouldn't know how many to have. We would suggest that if you make it available at public viewing sites, we'd have a better handle on how many to print and how to distribute it, so that it would be more cost effective and not just printing it one at a time as they come in.
Sure, understood. Okay, thank you very much. We have written testimony from Gerard Silva in opposition. Anyone else wishing to testify on HCR 87? Seeing none, members, any questions? Representative Tarnas.
Thank you. Mr. Nago, we were briefly talking before we started. If you could explain your thoughts about producing a certain number of copies and making them available at the libraries. So if you could just sort of outline what that is so we have an idea, so we can project what the cost might be.
So if we were to, instead of mailing them to individuals upon request, but have public viewing areas such as a libraries where we can direct people to go view the pamphlet there rather than printing it and mailing it out, we could have a better handle on the price, because we could actually not have to print that in-house. We could go out with an X amount of copies and print it at a printer, which would be a lot cheaper, and then direct people there. And we would also know how many we would need to print rather than just guessing how many people are going to request it.
Okay, so if we had, let's say, 50 public libraries, and let's identify some other sites, civic centers that we have throughout the state, then we'd come up with our total. and let's say we want to have 20 copies at each one for viewing, then we could add that up and come up with a price.
Yes, and then we could go out to print, get it printed, and it would be a lot cheaper than doing it in-house as it's
Okay.
requested.
And there's another measure, a bill that we have, which is requesting that you produce an online voter guide. And so this could be complementary to that, in that people would be able to look online and see the site and read it online, but then this would allow folks who don't have access that way to be able to go to the library to see it in
Correct.
print. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comprehensive testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, let's move on to HCR 88, HR 95, requesting the judiciary to prepare a master development plan, including a capital improvement project request to upgrade the South Kohala District Court. And let's see, we have a written testimony from the judiciary in support. And on Zoom, which is always a test for our broadband capabilities to the Big Island, Stanley Rohrig. Are you on? Mr. Rohrig, please proceed.
I'm on. Can you hear me, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
we can. Excellent.
Yeah, good.
Oh, good. Thank you for considering this matter. As I said in my written testimony, when I first came, I was born and raised in Manoa. When I first came to Hilo as a lawyer in 1966, I was deputy county attorney and then the public defender in 66 through 69. And I went to the Kamuela District Court building every week. And then after I was no longer the public defender, I went to the legislature for 8 years. I still kept going there to district court. And the same building's still there. It's lasted as long as me, but it certainly needs to be modernized. It is kind of a scary place. People complain about it, that specifically after hours are really scary because you have no way to isolate offenders from defenders, so to speak. And the area is growing so fast, Mr. Chairman, as you well know, that it's time that the judiciary started a serious research into having a judicial complex like we have in Hilo and Kona. The middle of our island is blossoming because of the interest from people from all over the world settling there because it's such a beautiful place to live. And our court system should keep up with it. And as you know, Mr. Chair, living in that area, this is something that is very important for the quality of life for people who live on this island and people who specifically live in the South Kohala, North Kohala area, Hamakua area, Honoka'a, down towards Route 137 going to Kona. There's a Hawaiian Homes area down there, and retirees from the mainland. So the place is booming. And on behalf of the Hawaii County Bar Association, I'm just here to encourage you folks to consider taking a strong look at this for the good of the community and the good of the judiciary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Glad to hear you loud and clear from the Big Island.
Okay.
William Heflin, Hawaii County Bar Association, also on Zoom.
He's
not-
in court right now.
He's in court,
Unless-
okay, but he supports you as well.
Oh, yes, he does.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's
Okay.
see. So is there anyone else wishing to testify on HCR 88? And if not, any questions, Chair Tarnas?
Thank you. Actually, not a question, but I'd just like to note for those who are watching that in the judiciary's testimony, they not only support the intent, but let me briefly read it. In October of 2022, The judiciary submitted a project initiation request to the Department of Accounting and General Services for transfer of funds for a planning project for the South Kohala District Court, which is what this topic of this resolution is. In conjunction with the Department of Accounting and General Services, the judiciary has made progress with hiring consultants to review record drawings, conduct site visits, and a physical assessment of the facility, and prepare a project development report and master plan for the renovation and expansion of the courthouse. This project development report will include recommendations and cost estimates for the expansions and upgrades necessary to resolve the problems related to the lack of space for court staff and users, courthouse security improvements, and access. And so the judiciary supports the intent of this measure and recognizes the need for physical and operational improvements for the South Kohala District Court complex. So I think we're all on the same page here. So I just want to let the folks know who are watching and listening, like our former colleague, Representative Rohrig, that I think we are moving in the right direction and we're making progress. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So this resolution would keep the momentum going.
That's right.
Okay, next up we have, I'm sorry? Oh, Rep. Souza, I'm sorry.
Quick question, Mr. Rohrig. I've never had the pleasure of going to the South Kohala District Court, and I'm all for the improvement of all of our courts. And I just was curious, the building in the pictures that I'm looking at on Google, it looks very small, but do you know, due to its age, if there are mold problems? I just asked because I know that, you know, a lot of staff has experienced that over at the Honolulu District Court. So is that an issue that is also happening up there?
The building is old, and because it's old, and the toilet facilities are from the dark ages. So the whole place is in need of modernization. If you ask me specifically if there's mold, that's not really my expertise, but if you ask me whether or not it looks like it needs a coat of paint and it needs to be modernized, and when you go into the bathroom, whether or not it smells, I would say, yeah, it does.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rohrig. I appreciate that. I just wanted to get an idea of what you're dealing with over there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If there are no more
rustic. It's rustic.
Rustic, yes. Okay. Rusty and rustic, yes. Thank you. Let's move on to HCR 125, if we may, requesting the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to identify resources needed to execute a plan to repair homes for safe habitation. And let's see, we have a testimony from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Thank you. Welcome.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony with comments, and I'm available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. And if I may briefly summarize, you suggest that you may require 2 positions to fulfill the...
Yes, we would need FTE positions for our compliance team, as well as our Homestead Services Division. They're listed in our testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, we have written testimony from Melissa Barker in support. Anyone else here wishing to testify on HCR 125? Any questions, members? Chair Tarnas.
For the department, I'm just curious, in your testimony, you identify the 2 full-time equivalent positions for the compliance team, 5 FTE office assistant position for Neighbor Island District offices,
Yes.
5 FTE positions for Homestead Services divisions, 2 FTE positions for the application branch. Are these positions, have they been approved as positions, and do you have funding for them? You're just not able to fill them?
Correct.
Okay, so you're not, it's just a challenge to do the hiring for these individuals?
Correct.
Got it, okay. All right, thank you very much, appreciate that. That's all my
Okay.
questions, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, let's move on to the final resolution of the afternoon, and that is HCR 148, HR 150, requesting the Department of the Attorney General to investigate, review, and pursue all applicable civil claims and criminal charges against the owner and commercial operator of the yacht Nakoa, which we all know was recently grounded in Honolulu Bay off Maui. Let's see, we have testimony from the DLNR.
DLNR will stand on our testimony providing comments.
Okay, I can't let you leave because Chair Tarnas asks that we provide, at least if you could, a couple sentences to summarize your testimony.
We are supporting Todd Toshima for DLNR. We're supporting the intent, and we defer to the Department of the Attorney General to the substance of this measure.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. We have, I understand, John Cardy from Save Honolulu Coalition in support, but we have his written testimony. I understand he prefers not to testify, but is available for questions. If the oh, would you like to? Go ahead, Mr. Cardy.
Okay. Aloha, this is John Cardy from the Save Honolulu Coalition, and I'm just available if you have any questions. Our testimony stands on its own.
Okay, and you do support the resolution, I might say. Correct?
Yes, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the community that accountability, everyone wants accountability to the yacht owner, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, we have written testimony from Maui County Council, from both Council Chair Alice Lee and Council Member Tamara Paulton in support. And I might mention we have approximately 20 to 25 individual statements from persons who are also in support of this measure. And with that, let me ask if there is anyone else wishing to testify on HCR 148. If not, members, any questions? Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tsushima. Thanks for being here. In your testimony, you say that the department, with the Department of Land and Natural Resources, with the support of the Department of Attorney General, is investigating, reviewing, and pursuing legal actions against the owner of the vessel Nakoa. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone who's listening knows that you're already on the job, working on this, and investigating, reviewing, and pursuing legal actions. Because some people might think that they haven't seen any actions except the removal of the vessel. I know you can't probably speak to this because it's a current investigation, but say as much as you can.
Well, I would just say that the investigation began when the vessel grounded. So we have been actively investigating, and we will be consulting with the Attorney General on our next steps.
Okay, and you are with the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation, correct?
Yes.
And you also have another division that's been working on this as well, if you could describe that briefly.
The Division of Aquatic Resources is investigating the extent of the coral damage caused by the grounding.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So you've got, and then you have another division, which is your enforcement arm. Could you briefly explain what they are doing?
I actually am not certain exactly what they are investigating.
Well, they probably can't tell you, but.
They are involved in the investigation as well.
Okay, and that's the Division of Conservation and Resource Enforcement.
Yes, and I also believe the Coast Guard is handling an investigation on their side, but we are not aware of the details of that either.
Okay, so there's a number of different entities that are pursuing their investigations, and I presume if you could that all of these agencies will then coordinate and combine their efforts and to actually take action.
Yeah, so as far as the criminal side, that would be for the Attorney General to discuss. On the civil side, it will most likely be some type of board action, a civil enforcement before the Board of Land and Natural Resources.
So when that happens, the division or divisions will make their recommendation for civil action to the State Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Yes.
Who, at a public meeting that will be noticed, so everyone will know that this is on the agenda. And if they're interested, they could read the staff submittal that is part of the board agenda, and then chime in and watch.
Yes, the board meetings there's 2 board meetings every month, and it will be announced if there will be a submittal for an enforcement, and the public is invited to testify before the board.
Okay, great, because I know there's a lot of people who are very interested in this, and I just this is an opportunity for you to say that you're working on it and what the process is.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Todd. All my questions, thank you.
Rep. Gannon?
you can share, what has been the cost thus far borne by the DLNR to remove the vessel?
The only cost I can share is what's been published in the newspaper and from DLNR, and that's about $460,000 for the removal. and-
$460,000.
Yes, that's the cost that's been borne by the state so far.
All right. Is it the DLNR's decision to come up with a plan for removal, or because there are some people that are unhappy with the fact that the COA is now sitting at the bottom of the ocean?
I can't reveal any details on that. That's part of the procurement process, but I could have my administrator contact you with some of the details if you'd like.
All right. One last, is this bad precedent from the perspective of the DLNR? Every time something like this happens and there's a series of processes that the DLNR and the Office of the Attorney General need to go through to administer civil and criminal complaints, would you expect the legislature to come back with a resolution every time something like this happens?
I can't speak for the legislature. I'm not sure how to answer your question if it's bad precedent. We do need to provide any alleged violators due process. So there is a process for them to respond to any allegations of violations, and that includes through the board process that would include their right to a contested case hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, this concludes our hearing, and we'll proceed to decision-making. First up, thank you, members, for being here. We have HCR 8, urging county governments to review their respective structures to identify risks of corruption and to develop improvements to reduce such risks. My recommendation is to move this forward as is. Members, any questions or concerns? Seeing none, Chair, would you please take the vote?
The recommendation of the Vice Chair is to pass HCR 8 unamended. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin? Aye. Representative Holt is excused for this measure and for all other measures on this agenda unless he returns. Representative Hashimoto? Aye. Representative Ichiyama is excused for this measure and other measures on the agenda unless he returns. Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kong is excused on this measure and every other measure on this agenda until he returns. Representative Mizuno?
Aye.
And Representative Souza?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next up, we have HCR 11/HR 8, urging counties to develop more funding for their county ethics boards and commissions. And I would like to move this forward as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Chair?
Thank you very much. On this measure, Vice Chair's recommendation, HCR 11, is to pass out unamended with all members present. Are there any ayes with reservations or any noes? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. This next measure is HCR 23/HR 25. Thank you for all the testifiers. I'd like to move this forward with several amendments. First of all, naming the Correctional System Oversight Commission Chair or designee as the chairperson of this task force, replacing the judiciary, but keeping the judiciary on as a task force member. Secondly, adding as a member of the task force a representative of the Crime Victim Compensation Commission. Thirdly, requiring a report from the task force by October 21st, 2024. Fourth, requiring that the task force work with the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center under the Attorney General and the Criminal Justice Research Institute in Judiciary in compiling this report. And finally, changing the title of this resolution to reflect the changes. Members, any questions or concerns? If not, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair recommendation on HCR 23 is to pass with amendments. All members who are present, are there any reservations? Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next up, we have HCR 51, HR 53, urging Governor to initiate a clemency program for those prosecuted for cannabis-related offenses. I'd like to move this forward with a simple amendment for style and consistency, and including changing the first whereas to read, whereas the war on drugs has been found to be destructive and devastating to immigrant, indigenous, and low-income individuals, families, and communities. That's the only change I have, other than for technical style and consistency. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, Chair, for the vote.
Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 51. Oh, and I should be saying on these, it's not just the HCR, but also the House resolution for the measures. So on HCR 51 and HR 53, the recommendation is to pass out with amendments. All members who are here, are there any reservations? Any nays? If not, your recommendation is adopted. And if I may, since I did not say, if I may, Chair, just to go back, you see I'm rusty on doing this. So on HCR 11 and HR 8, the recommendation was to pass unamended, and so I should quickly take the vote on HR 8. Recommendation is to pass unamended. All members who are here, any reservations or nays? If not, that one, your recommendation is adopted. On HR 25, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. All members who are here, are there any reservations or nays? If not, your recommendation is adopted for that measure as well. Thank you very much, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And my fault as well for not clarifying the vote. We'll just go back to our old jobs after this. Okay, let's see. Next up, we have HCR 63/HR 65, requesting the Attorney General to convene a task force to research the laws prohibiting conduct on or near school grounds or for the general protection of children attending school, and to distribute a summary of those laws to state and county buildings for public display. Thank you in particular to Ms. Hirohata for providing valuable information. I'd like to move this forward with a couple amendments. Number one, replacing the Attorney General with the Legislative Reference Bureau in substance and in title, removing reference to a task force and making this a study or report. And I guess that's it. Any questions or concerns? This does move on to finance for further consideration. If not, Chair, for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair's recommendation on HCR 63 and HR 65. I'll take the vote together. With all members who are present, are there any reservations? Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, HCR 74, HR 75, encouraging facilitation of a path to citizenship for immigrants from parties to the Compacts of Free Association. I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions, comments? Representative Canada.
Vice Chair, the Micronesian community, the Kofa community, representing thousands of people across the state. They are the only ethnic group in the state of Hawaii that does not have a path to citizenship, that does not have an opportunity to participate in our electoral democracy. I think that continuing to hold them as non-qualified aliens might have made sense decades ago, but continuing to do so is essentially racist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair, for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 74 and HR 75. I'll take the vote together. All members who are present, does anyone have any reservations? Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. For the next measure, HCR 86, HR 93, requesting LRB to conduct a study on systems of firearms insurance and other financial responsibility requirements. I'd like to move this forward with a couple of amendments, replacing reference to a study with the word report throughout the resolution. Secondly, asking, taking the LRB suggestions that we use LRB to compile a summary of other jurisdictions that have such mandatory insurance laws that have been enacted or may be enacted soon, and any other current laws that impose other financial responsibilities on firearms. Thirdly, to ask the insurance commissioner to provide an analysis of the feasibility and costs of firearms insurance and other financial responsibility requirements, and examine how these systems may be implemented in the state of Hawaii. With that, any questions or concerns, members? If not, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 86 and HR 93, taking the vote together. All members who are present, are there any reservations? Any?
Oh, any no's?
Any no's?
That's me. No, please. Thank you.
Okay. We have one no for Representative Souza. No reservations. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, HCR 88, HR 95, requesting the judiciary to prepare a master development plan, including a capital improvement project request to upgrade the South Kohala District Court. I'd like to move this forward as is. Question? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I skipped the measure accidentally. HCR 87, HR 94, requesting Office of Elections to prepare and submit a proposal to the legislature on the cost and personnel required to prepare and distribute a voter information guide. I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions, comments? Thank you. Let's move on. Let's Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 87 and HR 94. I'll take the vote together. Any members who are present that wish to vote with reservations? Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, now we'll move on to HCR 88, HR 95, requesting judiciary to prepare a master development plan, including CIP request to upgrade the South Kohala District Court. I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions or comments? If not, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 88 and HR 95 is to pass unamended. Members who are present, are there any reservations? Any nays? If not, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. HCR 125, HR 126, requesting Department of Hawaiian Homelands to identify resources needed to execute a plan to repair homes for safe habitation. I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions, comments? If not, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 125 and HR 126. Recommendation of Vice Chair is to move out unamended. And members who are present, are there any reservations? Reservations from Representative Ganadin. Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Finally, HCR 148, HR 150, requesting the Attorney General to investigate, review, and pursue civil claims and criminal charges against the owner and commercial operator of the yacht Nakoa. I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions, comments, concerns? If not, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Vice Chair, recommendation on HCR 148 and HR 150. Take the vote together. Members who are present, do you have any reservations? Reservations for Representative Ganadin.
Reservations for me as well, thank you.
Reservations for Representative Souza. Any other reservations? Any nays? If not, Vice Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We're adjourned.